A very good evening and welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar and I'm happy to bring you this show on this Monday evening when we have so much lined up for you. But let's dive in to our big story. Over the last 24 hours, everyone has a view on why the BCCI has decided to retain Vivo as its title sponsor for the IPL. Everyone has something to say about it, and here is why. Because over the last few weeks, India has unrolled a variety of steps to curb Chinese imports and Chinese influence on our lives after the clash on Galvan Valley at the LAC. Among these have been steps that include banning Chinese apps, restricting the import of color TV sets, asking e-commerce sites to display the made in origin, the country of origin tag. We're mulling reportedly regulation to curb the imports of imported toys and sporting goods and furniture, a lot of which comes into China. In fact, just a few minutes ago, news has come in that India has imposed anti-dumping duty on digital printing plates from China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan and Vietnam. So the message is clear. We want to curb the dependence on China. And then the Indian Premier League, which is such a huge, popular event for all Indians, has Vivo as its title sponsor. So now whether you have a view on this or not, or whatever the view may be, I think it's important for you to know what it's really all about and why it's so important. So let's put this in perspective for you. Now in 2019, Vivo won an additional 5 years of being the title sponsor of the IPL in a bid put out by the BCCI. They have agreed to pay 2,199 crore rupees for this. This works out to about 439 crore rupees per year. Before this, Vivo was the sponsor since 2016. Why did Vivo have to come in 2016? Remember, Pepsi was the sponsor before that. Vivo came in because Pepsi pulled out from the IPL because of the scandals, the betting scandals, etc., swirling around the tournament. Just by the way, the second highest bidder after Vivo in 2019 was Oppo, which belongs to the same mother company as Vivo. Vivo by itself has offered 400% more than what Pepsi was offering. What Pepsi was offering before 2016 was about 79 crore rupees a year. So when you're talking about this, it's important to put it into perspective because it's definitely something that gets people fired up one way or the other. Before we start our debate, and today we're talking about looking pragmatically at this whole issue of dependence on China. Where do you draw the line? Is it okay to ban apps but take sponsorship? Should the two things even be mixed? Are the issues being conflated? We will talk about all of this. But before that, I want to play out for you a short excerpt of a conversation I've had with Mr. Gautam Singhania, the MD and chairman of the Raymond Group, who had some very, very strong words to say about this issue.
We need to kickstart our economy, okay? Keep the IPL in India. Do it in a bubble. Do it between 3 cities. Do it in a controlled way and kickstart our economy. Why do we need to do it in Dubai? There's absolutely no reason for it. I mean, I'm sure our government can come up with a system. I mean, if you take Bombay, you do it at the Wankhede and you stay at the Oberoi. Why not? You can do it very easily in a bubble. Why do we have to do it in another country, and why do we have to kickstart their economy? The need of the hour is to kickstart our economy. And, we need to stay, as a country, we should stay away from Chinese products. There's a lot of resentment against Chinese. Why are we using Chinese sponsors for the IPL? I mean, is the IPL not concerned about what China has done to the world?
By the fact that IPL was taken out of India and now in the UAE, this could have been an opportunity to really kickstart the economy. And your comment about Chinese sponsors, what would the option be otherwise? The whole IPL would lose a lot of money.
You got to find another option. When there's so much hatred and resentment against Chinese and for what they have done to the world, are we saying money overrides everything? I'm sorry, this is my personal view, and a lot of people might not like what I say. But as far as bringing the IPL to India, keep it in India. Why can we as a country not work out a system to do it in a bubble? If you see Formula One today, Formula One is doing Formula One in a bubble. Let's learn something from them. And they're doing it across 7 or 8 countries. It will certainly be easier to do it within one country in India. Why can't we do it? And that will give so many more jobs, create so much of a positive sentiment that our country so needs.
All right, so strong views coming in there. By the way, this was something that Gautam Singhania felt he had to say about this. This is how strongly people feel about it. Let me welcome onto the panel today. Harish Bijur, brand guru, is joining me on this conversation. Manoj Joshi of the ORF speaks to us today, as does Mr. Jayan Das Gupta, former ambassador and former permanent representative of India to the WTO. Dinesh Pratap, co-founder of the Wooden Street, that is an Indian company which makes furniture, is also joining us on the show for perspective. So welcome to all of you, and let's begin. Now viewers are wondering, are we talking about IPL, are we talking about furniture? We're talking about China and India's perspective towards China, and it's important to look at this holistically, which is why, Harish Bijur, let me come to you first, and let's first tackle the issue of sponsorship. Was it in bad taste in your view to continue with Vivo, or was there no other choice? And should we look at this pragmatically? It's a big sponsor, it's putting in money in the BCCI.
Well, the answer to this is really the fact that it's a bad thing to do, a bad choice, and there's no other option together with it. Because if you really look at it, this entire continuing of the agreement is a four-power moment for BCCI and IPL. Because we must understand the macro situation. At one end, we have the government of India, we have PM Modi, who has categorically stated a view on China. And that's been followed up by the boycotting of 59 apps and then another 50 apps and boycotting everything that comes out of China. Now, that is one stance. The second stance is that of BCCI. Now, BCCI seems to be at crossroads, at different points in terms of thinking with the government of India on this particular situation. Because the BCCI seems to say that it's okay to continue Vivo sponsorship, and never mind that it's China. Some of it, I would just say that commerce pips everything. The very fact that IPL is going to have Vivo as a sponsor simply means to say that commerce pips everything else. And it simply means to say that this content that is made in UAE, because IPL, the current edition of IPL is going to be made in UAE soil, is going to be broadcast. It's going to be a broadcast consumption sport, and everybody is going to be making money. And never mind the fact that the political dispensation of the country thinks in a particular way. So I think, we're speaking in two tongues.
Commerce pips everything was a point that you made, Mr. Bijur, and it's an important one. It's an important one to understand in a broader context, because the choice to cut China out is not going to be an easy one or an inexpensive one for India, whether it's for our furniture makers or our businessmen or our automakers or our pharma makers or for anybody really. And that's why I want to get in Dinesh Pratap's point of view here. As an Indian company that makes furniture, and it's one sector where the Chinese have flooded the market over the last few years. Better priced, seemingly durable, easily accessible furniture has been flooding our markets. How do you look at this contradiction today?
Yes, so from my perspective of a furniture manufacturing, what I understand is that, India do not lack anything in terms of providing a sustainable furniture solutions to its population. Essentially, the Chinese imports, whichever are coming, are hurting us in a long way because they affect employment. The artisans are not, getting a sustainable livelihood in India. The art is dying, as well as, it's not getting passed on. So we definitely welcome the government's earlier decision of increasing the import duty, and we definitely feel that going ahead, also government should take a stand to protect the manufacturers like us who are promoting the Indian art, promoting Indian furniture, and taking it to masses, which definitely was not happening in India earlier due to the cheap imports coming from China. So we support government's decision in this direction if it happens. However, things like IPL getting sponsored by Chinese sponsors, again, when you do business, the economy takes everything inside and it goes forward only. So, from government perspective, we expect support, but, it's IPL again, which is taking its decision. We would have loved if it was an Indian sponsor who would have sponsored IPL, but that's not happening, I think, for this time.
For that, someone has to come forward. Someone has to come forward and say that I will pay you the same amount as Vivo was paying you. And therein lies the issue, doesn't it, Jayant Dasgupta? Does commerce pip everything, and do we need to be pragmatic when we are looking at this entire issue? We are looking at it from the point of view saying boycott or avoid buying Chinese goods, buy make in India goods. We want e-commerce players to display country of origin. We want to cut out phones that come from China. But then this part is okay. How do the two sit together?
The first thing we have to keep in mind is that we can't flick a switch and suddenly stop importing everything, not only from China, but from other countries as well. Because we import around $500 billion worth of goods, of which China accounts for about $70 billion, and Hong Kong another $15 billion or so. So we have to look at what do we import and why do we import? Can we do without it? Now, in the case of electronics and mobile phones, for instance, we have had a program of phased manufacturing since 2012, and also a modified special incentive package, which provided capital subsidies for setting up factories in India. Now, that has gone a long way towards making us relatively capable in the lower end of the spectrum. So we have to keep doing this and improve our own capability. And then as and when we get that capability, we have to switch off, and we can then rely on our own products. So that is one thing. It is very similar in the case of pharmaceuticals, where we are 70% of our APIs are coming from China at the moment, and the government has again launched a scheme for production-linked incentives for manufacturing APIs in India. So we can't do it overnight. As far as this IPL issue is concerned, of course, you didn't ask me this question, but I couldn't but resist giving an answer to this. I think
One also talk about it, and everyone must. Yes, please, Mr. Dasgupta.
As long as the Chinese companies are producing in India, Xiaomi and Oppo and Vivo, they are all producing in India. They have invested in India. They're selling in India. So as long as they are doing it, they have every right to advertise in India. And if they are spending huge amounts of money on advertising, it also helps the economy in a sense that revenue gets distributed in various channels. So we have to attract investment which are not going to jeopardize our security interests. So that is the reason why we have banned, for instance, these 59 Chinese apps. And that is based on our national security perception and the threats that we perceive from these apps. And the Americans are also going to, I understand, follow suit. There are other countries which are thinking along these lines. So on national security exceptions, there can't be any compromise. But becoming self-sufficient is extremely important, top priority for us, but we can't do it overnight. That is the short point that I wanted to make.
Okay, so okay, that's a very interesting take. And Manoj Joshi, I'm going to invite you in on this debate now. So if it's a national security issue, then ban, like we've done with the apps. But then what about things like toys, furniture? And does the same then extend to the IPL sponsorship? Mr. Das Gupta's argument is an interesting one. If these companies can manufacture in India, then legally, technically, they can advertise in India. So then why not for the IPL?
Well, I think they're right in the sense, the point is that why are we getting money? Why did China become such a big manufacturing power? It became so because it was able to provide low-cost, high-quality products. Unfortunately, in our country, we have been high-cost, low-quality products. Why did these people go there in the first place? Why did the API land up in China? They were all here. They all went there. Same thing happened in the United States. So there's a certain process. Now you want to reverse it, you've got to reverse the circumstances of that. It's not, so you've got to give me low-cost, high-quality product here. You want to give me a nice chair. I want a low-cost, high-quality product which can compete with China. Don't tell me that in the national interest, I must pay more for it. That's ridiculous. And when it comes to things like IPL, my point is very simple. It's a realistic point. My point is, if we are getting Chinese money, who are we to complain? If Chinese are willing to spend their money to promote cricket, okay, I don't mind getting Chinese money to build highways in this country. The Chinese used the Japanese in the 1980s. The Chinese used Japanese ODA to do all their initial infrastructure construction. And only when they had developed their infrastructure did they give the Japanese a kick. So all I'm trying to say is that one must be absolutely pragmatic on this. One must have a cold calculation. What is in my national interest? If it's in my national interest that they shouldn't fund the IPL, fine. I have no problem. If my national security is served by rejecting Chinese furniture, fine. But let's calculate that. Let's have a clear-cut idea as to what we are doing and why we are doing it. And yes, I agree with Mr. Das Gupta. Whatever you want to do is not going to be done overnight. This is something which you will have to systematically work on. I have visited several Chinese high-tech zones. They have come up in the past 30, 40 years. It has taken them 30, 40 years to come up. What Shenzhen or the Pearl River Delta is today is not something that came up overnight. We're talking, it began in the 1990s. We also had a similar process. For example, if you look at Pimpri, Chinchwad,
All right. Point taken.
Look at these areas, they also took time to come up. But we've had no new areas come up since then.
Okay, point taken. I just want to come to the two specific points, and here I want Dinesh Pratap to respond to the point you made that don't ask us to buy, and you gave the example of furniture, which is why I'm getting Mr. Pratap in. Don't ask us to buy something Indian made if it's not the same quality and not in the same price point. As consumers, we have the right to, choose the best. How do you respond to that, Mr. Pratap?
I definitely agree to both Mr. Joshi and Mr. Das Gupta on their point that, it cannot happen overnight. And second thing, we need to investigate the reasons why it went there. Now, if I talk about furniture, if we dissect this industry, we feel that, India has everything which should be, for a furniture manufacturer to produce a quality product at a reasonable price in India. But what has happened over the past few years is that we were dumped with cheap imports. Now, when I say cheap, it means the raw material used into that furniture, it's rubber wood, but being sold as a solid wood. The issue which happens is, using technology, if you replace real wood with a composition of wood particles and rubber and whatnot, and then sell it as a wood, then it's not going to work, because after all, once a customer start using the product, they realize that the quality is really inferior. So when I say ban Chinese furniture, I definitely want to prove the point that, the quality is also inferior, although the prices are low. Had it been a good quality furniture at a reasonable pricing being imported from China, and I definitely feel that, consumer is the ultimate king. Consumer should have a right to choose what he should pay for the quality he is buying. But at least government should oversee the fact that a lot of import from China is happening at less than invoice pricing just to avoid import duties. So such practices should be stopped. Fundamental level playing field should be there for Indian manufacturers also. And I re-stress the point that India lacks nothing in terms of at least home furnishing industry. I'm not sure about pharma or other sectors, but in this sector, definitely we have all the fundamental things in place for us to be competitive as well as better in quality. So that's my point.
Okay. Harish Bijur, I want you to come into the point that has been made about the sponsorship deal, saying that there's no harm taking Chinese money if they are giving it to BCCI and to IPL. There is no harm if it does us no harm. We have to be pragmatic, says Manoj Joshi. What is your response?
Pragmatism certainly has a point, but we must appreciate that China is not giving us this money as a country. China is actually spending that money. A Chinese company is actually spending that money by making these phones in India and developing a market share for itself. And over a period of time, there is, of course, repatriation of profits, etc., which is the normal route which most companies of a foreign origin take. So to that extent, I don't think China is doing something great to India by sponsoring 440 crores per annum on the IPL. Actually, this is a money game. If you put in so much, you want to take out that much more. And it is a return on investment game. And every company which is in commercial space understands ROI pretty neatly. Essentially, the point to note is that money finds its own level. Like water finds its own level, money finds its own level. And it's incontrovertible fact to say that a consumer certainly does not want to pay more than what he's used to paying for a particular mobile phone, let's say, in this case. So typically speaking, what does India want at this point of time? I think the arguments are threefold. The first argument is an economic argument. And the economic argument is backed with pragmatism. And the pragmatic argument is about saying it can't happen overnight. Of course, it can't happen overnight. This should be a 15-year plan. And that plan hasn't taken off as yet, except in three categories that we did refer to at this point of time. The second argument, apart from the economic argument, is the emotional argument. And guess what? The emotional argument is about timing. Fortunately or unfortunately, public memory is proverbially and really short. But the emotional argument at this point of time is at a peak. And therefore, all the memes and all the anger that you see in social media today, the moment one heard that a Chinese brand is actually going to be the right sponsor. And the third argument is a nationalistic argument. So essentially, we need to weigh these three. There's an economic argument, there is an emotional argument, there's a nationalistic argument. Which of these arguments wins? That's what we need to wait and watch.
The thing also is that it makes the policy direction seem muddled. What is the message that we're giving? Are we contradicting ourselves? And technically you would say, yes, the BCCI is a private body, IPL is, it's run by the BCCI, but it's wrapped up in so much of emotion and nationalism. In that sense, Manoj Joshi, what about the timing? What about the perception? On the one hand, you're, putting import duties and you're putting, barriers on everything from planning to do it from color televisions to digital printing plates. And then Vivo goes and sponsors the IPL. I know when you say that if they can make it, why can't they advertise? But do you think it's not jarring at this point and it makes one wonder what is the plan?
No, you're absolutely right on that, meaning the whole policy is completely muddled. I'm saying the very fact that India has stayed out of the RCEP, and now the other day I read in the newspaper that we want to renegotiate our FTA with the ASEAN. So we are basically telling the world that you trade with us on our terms. The point is, we need to trade with the world if we want to get out of our poverty trap. Trading is an extremely important means of doing that. To do that, we've got to work our trading systems in such a way that we are the gainers. And I have no disagreement. I know that Chinese are big WTO cheats. I mean, they cheat a lot of the WTO regulations, etc. Mr. Dasgupta would probably have a better idea of that. But my issue out here is that we need to have some kind of a strategic plan. Unfortunately, with this government, everything looks muddled, meaning on one hand, we are signaling that we are not interested in trade. We are wanting Atmanirbharta. Now, the whole issue of self-reliance,
Mr. Joshi, to be
it sends
fair,
different kind of...
1 minute. Mr. Joshi, to be fair, IPL deciding who its sponsor is, you can't put that on the government's door.
No. I'm not arguing that.
That is their own decision.
I was talking on the strategic point that when you say self-reliance, then you can say self-reliance means that IPL should not accept the Chinese money. Self-reliance would mean that you take a low Indian bid if a low Indian bid is available.
It's a private organization.
See, I don't care, but if your strategic direction is that
it's a private organization.
If your strategic direction is that the country should be self-reliant, then basically there is a point, meaning the government is signaling across the board a kind of protectionism. My point is something else. My point is just that the muddled policy that we are confronting. We don't know what is it that the government wants, which direction it wants to take us. Whether it wants to give the private company the freedom, it should say so.
Yeah, I think, okay. Yeah, I think the government policy so far is pretty clear in the direction in which it seems to be going. Explicitly, there is no mention of China on most of these measures that have taken place. It's important for viewers to know that as well. Whether it's the apps, or is the country of origin point, or is the licensing of imported, color television and their various parts, there's no mention of China. But these are locations and areas which will impact China. And the direction as far as the government is concerned is very clear. Should IPL then be seen as a private affair with a Chinese sponsor and it's purely commercial decision? Well, that is really a tough question to ask this evening, and it's one which has so much of emotion wrapped up in it. I want to thank all of you gentlemen for joining us on the first discussion this evening. We'll take a very short break on the show, but don't go away, because when I come back, I'm talking about the new education policy. It's run into a bit of controversy. Tamil Nadu says it will not implement the 3-language formula which is in the policy. I speak with former Education Secretary Anil Swarup after this break.